What's up everyone? Welcome back to the channel. Today I'm gonna share a story that came from a 911 dispatcher with 12 years on the job. Someone who's taken tens of thousands of emergency calls throughout their career. Most people think 911 calls are just people screaming for help, reporting crimes, asking for ambulances, but this dispatcher received a different kind of call over the years, calls from people who weren't asking for help. They were confessing to things they'd already done or were about to do, speaking with terrifying calmness about acts so disturbing you question everything you thought you knew about human nature. One call in particular still haunts him to this day, still makes him wake up at 3 a.m. replaying every word. A voice he'll never forget describing something so twisted that even 12 years later, he checks his locks twice every night. If you're enjoying this content, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and drop a comment telling me where you're watching from. Now let's get into the story. Most calls you take as a 911 dispatcher follow predictable patterns after you've been doing the job long enough. Medical emergencies where people are panicked, scared, desperately trying to describe symptoms while you walk them through CPR or first aid. Domestic disturbances where you can hear shouting and breaking glass in the background, trying to get an address before the line goes dead. Car accidents where people are in shock, speaking too fast or too slow, adrenaline making everything surreal. After 12 years working dispatch for a major metropolitan area, I thought I'd heard every type of emergency call possible. Thought I'd developed the thick skin necessary to handle whatever came through my headset. I was wrong. There's a type of call that's different from all the others. A type that stays with you long after your shift ends, long after the case is closed, sometimes forever. These are the confession calls. The ones where someone calls 911 not to ask for help, but to tell you what they've done or what they're about to do. They're not looking for intervention. They're not hoping you'll talk them down or send someone to stop them. They're calling because they need a witness, need someone official to hear their words, need to create a record of their actions or intentions. The first time I received one of these calls, I didn't recognize it for what it was. Thought it was just another disturbed person, another mental health crisis I needed to manage until units could arrive. But as the call progressed, I realized this person wasn't asking for anything, wasn't seeking help, was simply confessing like I was a priest in a booth. Like they needed absolution or acknowledgement before they crossed a line they'd never be able to uncross. Over 12 years, I've received 23 calls I would categorize as true confessions. 23 times someone has called to tell me about violence, about death, about acts so disturbing I had to take breaks after the calls ended, had to sit in the bathroom stall and process what I'd just heard. Some confessed to things already done, bodies already cold, evidence already scattered, calling to claim credit or explain motivation or simply announce what they'd accomplished. Others confessed to things they were about to do, plans already in motion, decisions already made, calling in those final moments before action. That last second of hesitation where part of them wanted someone to know, someone to understand, someone to witness what they believed was necessary or justified or inevitable. The protocols for these calls are clear: keep them talking, get location information, dispatch units immediately, try to prevent whatever's about to happen or apprehend whoever's calling about what they've already done. But protocols can't prepare you for the tone of these calls, the eerie calmness in voices describing graphic violence, the rational explanations for irrational acts, the absolute conviction that what they're doing or have done is right, justified, necessary. These aren't people screaming in rage or crying in remorse. These are people explaining their actions like they're describing a recipe or giving directions. Clinical detachment from horror they're directly responsible for, and that disconnect, that gap between the content and the delivery, that's what makes these calls truly terrifying. I'm going to tell you about several of these confession calls, about the ones that succeeded and the ones we prevented, about the voices that still echo in my head years later, about the cases that were solved because someone needed to tell us what they'd done. But first, I need to tell you about the one call that changed everything for me, the one that made me understand that true horror isn't always violence. Sometimes it's patience. Sometimes it's planning. Sometimes it's someone calmly explaining that they've done something you won't understand for years, that they're playing a game with time frames measured in seasons or decades. And there's nothing you can do to stop them, because by the time anyone realizes what's happened, they'll be long gone, or transformed, or simply waiting. That call came on a Tuesday afternoon, normal shift. Nothing remarkable about the day. I'd already handled a dozen calls, routine stuff. Nothing that stood out. Then my board lit up. New call. I clicked to accept it, gave my standard greeting, 911. What's your emergency? There was a pause, not unusual. Sometimes people need a moment to collect themselves, to figure out how to explain their crisis. Then a voice came through, male, adult, but there was something strange about the quality of it, something that made my skin prickle immediately. Not threatening exactly, not angry, just off, like the voice didn't quite match the words, like there was a disconnect between the speaker and what was being said. I'm calling to tell you about the bad thing I did, the voice said, calm, almost pleasant, with an odd cadence like he was reading from a script he'd practiced. There's a family living at 2847 Riverside Drive, mother, father, 2 little girls. Ages 6 and 9, I know because I've been watching them for 3 months, learning their routines, their schedules, their habits. My hand was already moving to start the trace, to get units rolling, to follow protocol, but something in his tone made me pause, made me listen instead of interrupt immediately. I was inside their house 3 nights ago, he continued. While they were at a birthday party, I know because I watched them leave. Watched them come home 2 hours later. I was inside their home for those 2 hours. The violation of it hit me immediately. Someone breaking into a house not to steal, but to what? What did you do in their house? I asked, keeping my voice neutral, professional, trying not to show the disgust and fear I was feeling. He laughed softly, not a cruel laugh exactly, more like someone appreciating a private joke. I move things, he said. Small things, things they might not notice immediately. Picture frames tilted just slightly, a kitchen drawer opened exactly 3 inches. A bathroom door that was closed now standing open. Their daughter's stuffed bear moved from the bed to the chair. I want them to notice slowly, want them to question themselves, wonder if they're remembering wrong, if they're going crazy. That moment of doubt, that uncertainty, that's what I'm after. I felt my stomach turn. This wasn't about theft or violence. This was about psychological terror, about making a family question their own reality, about violation not of property but of sanity. But that's not the bad thing, he continued, voice dropping slightly, becoming more intimate like he was sharing a secret. The bad thing is I left something there, something they won't find for a long time. Months maybe, years possibly, hidden somewhere they'd never think to look, and when they eventually find it, they'll know. They'll understand that I was there, that I touched everything, that I know them, and they'll never feel safe again. They'll never sleep peacefully. They'll always wonder if I've been back, if I'm watching right now, if there are other things hidden they haven't found yet. My hands were shaking as I typed, getting the address, dispatching units with high priority, trying to keep him talking, trying to get more information. Anything that would help identify him. What did you leave there? I asked, needing to know, dreading the answer. The pause stretched out, 5 seconds, 10. I could hear him breathing, calm, steady breaths. Finally, he spoke again. That's the beautiful part, he said. I'm not going to tell you, not going to tell them. They'll have to find it themselves, and until they do, they'll wonder, and even after they find it, if they find it. They'll wonder if there's more, if I left other things, if their entire house is contaminated by my presence. That uncertainty, that permanent doubt, that's my gift to them. That's what I wanted to confess to you, that I've poisoned their sense of safety and there's nothing anyone can do to restore it. Before I continue with the Riverside Drive call and its aftermath, I need to give you context about how I got to the point where that call affected me so deeply. My first real confession call came about 7 years into my career as a dispatcher. I'd handled thousands of calls by then, thought I'd heard everything, thought nothing could surprise me anymore. It was a Wednesday evening, around 7 p.m., relatively quiet shift. I was finishing up a routine noise complaint when a new call came in. I accepted it, gave my greeting, and immediately knew something was different about this one. The voice was female, middle-aged probably, but completely flat, no emotion, no inflection, like a computer reading text. "I need to tell someone what I did to my husband," she said. No preamble, no build-up, just straight into it. I started my routine questions, trying to assess if this was a domestic situation requiring immediate response, trying to determine if someone was in danger. "Ma'am, is anyone injured? Do you need medical assistance?" Standard protocol. Establish if there is an immediate threat to life. She was quiet for a moment, then said, "He's injured, yes, he's in the basement. But I'm not calling for help for him. I'm calling to tell you what I did and what I'm going to do." That's when I realized this wasn't a standard domestic call. This was something else entirely. "Ma'am, I need you to tell me what happened. I need to know if anyone needs immediate medical attention." I was trying to keep her talking, trying to get information, already signaling my supervisor that this was escalating beyond routine. "My husband has been beating me for 15 years, she said in that same flat tone, like she was reciting a grocery list. "Tonight he came home drunk again. It's Wednesday, so he always comes home drunk on Wednesdays, very predictable, and he started hitting me, same as always. But tonight I was ready, I had a hammer. I hit him in the head 3 times very hard. My blood ran cold. I was typing frantically, trying to get an address, trying to dispatch units, trying to keep her on the line. "Ma'am, what's your address?" "I'm sending help right now." But she just continued in that emotionless voice. "He fell down, but he wasn't dead, so I dragged him to the basement. He's heavy, but adrenaline helped, and I hit his spine with the hammer. I researched where to hit to paralyze someone, and it worked. He can't move now. Just his head, he can talk. He's been begging me to call an ambulance for 3 hours now." 3 hours. She'd been torturing him for 3 hours before calling. "I'm not calling for an ambulance," she continued. "I'm calling to tell you that I'm going to finish it. I'm going to go back down there, and I'm going to make him suffer the way he made me suffer for 15 years. And I wanted someone to know that he deserves this, that this is justice, that someone needs to understand why I'm doing this." I was pleading with her by this point, trying every technique I'd been trained in, trying to establish rapport, trying to delay her, trying to make her see there were other options. Legal options, help available, anything to buy time for units to arrive. "Ma'am, I understand you've been hurt. I understand you're in pain. But this isn't the answer. Please let us help you. Let us help him. There are resources. There are ways to handle this that won't destroy your life." She laughed. First sound of emotion I'd heard from her. A bitter, hollow laugh. "My life was destroyed 15 years ago when I married him, when the first punch landed. When I called police the first time and they did nothing. When I went to court and the judge gave him probation. My life has been destroyed for a very long time. This isn't destroying my life. This is finally taking control of it. I'm going to describe to you what I did," she said. And that's when the call became truly horrific, because she proceeded to detail, in graphic clinical terms, exactly what she'd done to her husband over those 3 hours, where she'd hit him, how many times, what bones she'd broken, what sounds he'd made, what he'd begged her, what promises he'd made. She wasn't bragging exactly, wasn't gloating, was just reporting, like a scientist documenting an experiment. "Each time I hit him, I told him this was for a specific time he hurt me," she explained. "This one's for the night you broke my ribs. This one's for the time you put me in the hospital and I had to lie to doctors. This one's for the years you made me afraid in my own home, and he understands now. He finally understands what he did. I can see it in his eyes. Units were already en route. I could hear the sirens in the background of the call. She could hear them too. "They're coming," she said, still calm. "I can hear them." Which means I need to finish this. I just wanted someone to know why. I wanted it on record that this wasn't senseless violence. This was years of violence finally being answered. This was justice when the system failed to provide it. Tell people that. Tell them I tried everything else first. Tell them he created this. The line went dead. I heard the disconnection tone, felt physically sick. Sat there with my headset on listening to the dead air, waiting for update from units on scene. The update came 6 minutes later. Officers had entered the residence, found the husband dead in the basement, multiple trauma to head and body, evidence of prolonged torture, found the wife sitting calmly at the kitchen table, hands still covered in blood, hammer on the table in front of her. She didn't resist arrest, didn't say anything, just went quietly. The case was straightforward from a prosecution standpoint, clear evidence, confession on recorded 911 line. No question about what happened. But it haunted me because of how she'd sounded, that complete emotional disconnection. Like years of abuse had burned out everything inside her except cold, calculating rage. And when that rage finally acted, it was methodical, planned, executed with the precision of someone who'd been thinking about it for a very long time. That was my first real confession call, the first time someone had called not to get help, but to explain what they were doing and why. To make sure someone understood, someone knew, someone witnessed. I thought it was unique, thought it was a one-time thing, an aberration that wouldn't happen again. I was wrong. Over the following years, I'd received 22 more calls like it, 22 more confessions of acts done or about to be done, 22 more voices calmly explaining horror like it was reasonable, justified, necessary. Each one took something from me. Each one made me question humanity a little more, made me understand that the line between civilized behavior and violence is thinner than we want to believe. But under the right circumstances, with the right pressures, anyone can cross that line. And some people cross it with such calm certainty, it's more terrifying than any rage-filled attack. That first call taught me to recognize the pattern, the tone of voice, the particular quality of someone who's made a decision and is past the point of negotiation. It taught me that sometimes my job isn't to prevent or help. Sometimes it's just to listen, to witness, to be the official record of someone's last rational moments before they do something that will change lives forever. It's the part of the job they don't really prepare you for in training. The psychological weight of being the person these confessors choose to tell, of carrying their words with you long after the call ends, of hearing their voices in your head during quiet moments, of wondering if you could have said something different, could have made a difference, could have changed the outcome. Usually the answer is no. Usually by the time they call, the decision is already made. The path is already set, and all you can do is listen and dispatch and hope you're wrong about what's about to happen. The second confession call that really shook me came about 3 months after the basement torture case. I'd been in therapy dealing with that one, working through the trauma of hearing someone calmly describe violence in such graphic detail, starting to think maybe I could move past it. Then a call came in at 3:17 a.m. on a Saturday, that time when the city is at its quietest, when most calls are either medical emergencies or drunk people in trouble. I accepted the call, gave my greeting, and heard a young male voice. Maybe late 20s, early 30s, there was an energy in the voice that immediately put me on alert. Not fear or panic, something else, something that made my skin crawl. "I did something tonight that I've been planning for 8 months, he said, voice almost breathless with excitement. "And I need to tell someone about it because it's perfect. It's exactly what I wanted, and I need someone official to know so that when she reports it, when she calls you guys tomorrow or the next day, you'll know I called first. You'll know this was planned. You'll know this was art." That word, art, the way he said it with such reverence, made my stomach turn. "Sir, what did you do? Did you hurt someone?" I was trying to keep my voice neutral, but the fear was creeping in. This person sounded wrong, Sounded like someone who'd crossed a line and was celebrating it. I didn't hurt anyone physically, he said, almost offended I'd suggested it. I'm not a monster. I'm an artist. I create experiences. I craft psychological landscapes. What I did tonight was so much more elegant than violence. He proceeded to explain, in detail that still makes me feel sick, about a woman who lived 2 streets from him, how he'd been watching her for months, learning her schedule, her habits, her routines, how she lived alone, how she felt safe in her home, how perfect she was as a subject for his project. Tonight I broke into her house, he said, pride clear in his voice. While she was sleeping, I was in there for 4 hours and she never knew. She slept right through it, completely vulnerable, completely unaware. I took pictures, he continued, and I could hear him breathing faster, getting more excited as he described it. Hundreds of pictures, her sleeping, her things, her entire life documented. I went through every drawer, every closet. I touched everything. I know her now. I know her more intimately than anyone. I know what medication she takes, what books she reads, what underwear she prefers. I know everything, and I left her a gift. The gift, he explained, was copies of the photos, printed and arranged carefully on her kitchen table. So when she woke up and came downstairs, she'd find them. She'd know someone had been there, watching her, recording her, violating every inch of her private space while she slept completely unaware. But he wasn't done. The photos on the table were just the first part. I also left messages, he said, voice dropping to almost a whisper like he was sharing an intimate secret, written on her bathroom mirror, on her bedroom wall, places she find them throughout the day, messages telling her I was there. I watched her. I could have done anything. I was standing over her bed while she slept. I was inches from her face, and she never woke up. She never knew. And now she never not know. She never feel safe again. She never sleep without wondering if I'm there, if I've come back, if I'm watching right now. The satisfaction in his voice was palpable. He wasn't getting off on physical violation. He was getting off on psychological torment, on the knowledge that he'd permanently destroyed this woman's sense of security. Sir, I need you to give me your location. We need to talk about this. I was trying every approach I could think of, trying to engage him, trying to keep him on the line long enough to trace the call. He laughed, delighted laugh like a child who'd pulled off a successful prank. I'm not giving you my location, and I'm using a burner phone, so good luck tracing it. I've thought this through. I've planned every detail. And there's nothing you can do. By the time you find her and she tells you what happened, I'll be gone, back to my normal life, my normal identity, and no one will ever know. Except you. You'll know. You'll be the official witness to my art. But here's the best part, he said, voice full of anticipation. I'm going to tell you something you need to pass on to her when you find her. When she reports this, I need you to tell her something from me. I didn't want to hear it, didn't want to be part of whatever sick game he was playing, but I had to keep him talking, had to get any information I could. Tell her, he said slowly, deliberately. Tell her I'll be back. Not tonight, not tomorrow. Maybe not for months, maybe not for years, but I'll come back. And she'll never know when, she'll never know if tonight's the night. She go to bed every night for the rest of her life wondering if I'm in her house, if I'm watching her sleep, if I'm standing over her bed, and that uncertainty, that permanent fear, that's my real art. That's what I've created, a lifetime of terror from a single night. The line went dead, he'd hung up. I sat there shaking, feeling contaminated by what I just heard, by being made part of his plan, by being used as his messenger to deliver terror to his victim. I immediately dispatched units to the address he'd mentioned, gave them everything I had, which wasn't much, warned them about what they'd find, tried to prepare them, though I'm not sure you can prepare for something like that. Units arrived at the address 20 minutes later, found exactly what he'd described, found the woman in complete hysteric shock, surrounded by hundreds of photos of herself sleeping, vulnerable, violated, found the messages written throughout her house, threatening messages, violating messages, promises that he'd return, that she'd never be safe, that he'd always be watching. The case went to detectives. They processed the scene, collected the photos, documented the messages, tried to find forensic evidence, fingerprints, DNA, anything that could identify him. He'd been careful, worn gloves, cleaned up after himself, left nothing identifiable except his work, except the terror he'd created. The woman was so traumatized she couldn't stay in her house. Moved out immediately, stayed with family, eventually relocated to another state, but the psychological damage was permanent. She'd never sleep without medication, never feel truly safe anywhere. He'd accomplished exactly what he set out to do. He'd destroyed her sense of security so thoroughly she'd carry that fear forever. That case still bothers me because he was right. There was nothing we could do, no way to identify him, no way to stop him, no way to prevent him from doing it again to someone else. He's still out there somewhere. Maybe he's moved on. Maybe he's done more projects. Maybe he calls other dispatchers now to confess his art. Maybe he's sitting in some normal job, living some normal life, and no one around him has any idea what he's capable of, what he enjoys, what he considers artistic expression. That's almost worse than the violent confessions. The knowledge that someone can be this calculated, this methodical, this committed to causing psychological harm, and be completely invisible, completely undetectable, just another face in the crowd planning their next project. 6 months after the photo case, I thought I'd developed better emotional boundaries, thought I'd learned to compartmentalize these confession calls, to not let them seep into my personal life. My therapist said I was making progress, said I was learning to process the trauma in healthy ways, said I seemed more stable. Then I got a call that destroyed all that progress in 15 minutes, a call that still makes me wake up screaming, a call that made me understand that some horrors are so profound, so complete, that there's no compartmentalizing them. They just become part of you, permanently scarring your psyche in ways that never fully heal. It was a Sunday afternoon in May, beautiful spring day, windows open in the dispatch center, everyone in good spirits because the weather was nice and call volume was light. I just finished a routine medical call, elderly woman with chest pains who turned out to be having a panic attack, fairly standard stuff. New call came in, I accepted it. Heard a male voice, middle-aged, calm, almost serene in a way that immediately triggered my instincts. "I'm calling from my car," he said, voice steady as if he was calling about a parking ticket. "I'm parked at Miller's Lake, North Access Road. My wife and 3 children are in the back seat, and I need to tell you what I'm doing before I do it." My hands went cold. I knew immediately this was going to be bad. Something about the tone, the setup, the calmness in his voice while mentioning his family. "Sir, what's happening? Is everyone okay?" I was already typing, getting the location, preparing to dispatch units, but trying to keep my voice neutral, not wanting to escalate whatever was happening. "They're fine right now," he said. "The children are playing with their tablets in the back seat. My wife is reading a book. They think we're on a family outing, which I suppose we are, in a way, our last outing together as a family." That phrase, last outing, made my stomach drop. I knew where this was going, but couldn't believe it. Couldn't accept what he was describing so casually. "I've sealed all the doors and windows," he continued in that same calm voice. "I bought special tape for it. Made sure there are no gaps, no air leaks, and I've run a hose from the exhaust pipe into the car. Into the back seat area where the children are sitting, they haven't noticed yet. They're too focused on their games." Carbon monoxide poisoning. He was describing a murder-suicide in real time with his children and wife as victims, and he sounded like he was explaining routine car maintenance. "Sir, you need to stop what you're doing right now. You need to open those doors. Get your family out of that car. Whatever you're going through, whatever problems you're facing, this isn't the answer. Please. Think about your children." I was begging now, protocol out the window, just desperate human pleading. "I am thinking about my children," he said, almost offended. "That's why I'm doing this. I lost my business 3 months ago, lost everything. We're going to lose our house next week. I have $67 in my bank account, no job prospects, no way to support my family, and I will not let my children suffer poverty. I will not let them go through what I went through as a child. The hunger, the shame, the fear. I'm protecting them from that. This is me being a good father. This is me taking responsibility when I can't provide. The justification in his voice was terrifying. The absolute conviction that murder was protection, that killing his family was an act of love and responsibility. I could hear sounds in the background, children's voices, faint but clear, arguing about something in a tablet game. Completely normal sibling interaction, completely unaware they were minutes from death. Your wife, I said, grasping at anything. Does she know what you're doing? Does she agree with this? There was a pause. Then he answered, I drugged her coffee before we left. Nothing dangerous. Just enough sedatives to make her drowsy. She's been drifting in and out. She thinks she's just tired. By the time she fully understands what's happening, it'll be too late. She would have tried to stop me. She doesn't understand that this is mercy, that I'm saving them from years of suffering. She would have made it harder. This way is better. This way is peaceful. The children will fall asleep first, he explained, like he was describing their bedtime routine. Carbon monoxide makes you drowsy. They'll think they're just tired. They'll close their eyes, and they won't wake up. No pain, no fear, no awareness of what's happening. Then my wife, then me, will all fall asleep together as a family, which is more than most people get. Most families are torn apart by death. Scattered, alone, we'll be together. Always together. The sick logic of it, the twisted reasoning, the way he'd convinced himself this was love, was making me physically ill. I had dispatched every available unit to Miller's Lake, had them coming in silent, no sirens, trying not to spook him, but I knew it would take time. The lake was 15 minutes from the nearest station, and I didn't think we had 15 minutes. Sir, please, just open the doors, just turn off the car. Give us a chance to help. There are resources. Social services, programs designed to help families in financial crisis. Your children deserve a chance to live, to grow up, to have their own families someday. You're taking that from them. You're making a permanent decision based on a temporary problem. I was trying every angle, trying to reach something human inside him. But he just sighed, patient sigh like a teacher with a slow student. You don't understand, he said. I've researched every resource, applied for every program. I've spent 3 months trying to find a way out of this. There is no help, not real help, not fast enough, not enough to save us from what's coming. I've done the math. I've looked at all the options. This is the only one that protects them. That keeps them together. That ensures they never suffer. I heard a child's voice get louder, saying something I couldn't make out. Then the father's voice responding, still calm, still loving, telling them everything was fine. They were just resting for a bit before going home. How long have they been breathing the fumes? I asked, needing to know how much time we had. About 12 minutes, he said, checking his watch apparently. The children should start feeling sleepy in the next few minutes. I researched the timeline extensively, wanted to make sure I understood the process. Didn't want any mistakes, didn't want anyone to suffer unnecessarily. 12 minutes, units were still 8 minutes out. We didn't have time. I couldn't keep this family alive with just words, but I had to try. Your children, I said. What are their names? Tell me about them. Tell me what they love, what they're good at, what they want to be when they grow up. Maybe if I made them real to me, if I spoke about them as individuals, it would break through his delusion. He was quiet for a moment, then started talking, voice softening with genuine love. Emma is 9. She wants to be a veterinarian. She brings home every stray animal she finds. She has the kindest heart. And Sophia is 6. She loves to dance. She's always dancing around the house. And Michael is 4. He's obsessed with trains, knows every type, can identify them by sound. The love in his voice was real. Genuine parental pride, which made what he was doing even more horrific. "They sound amazing," I said. "Voice breaking. They sound like children who deserve to grow up. To become the vet and the dancer and the train engineer, you're taking that from them. You're taking away every birthday, every Christmas, every achievement, every moment of joy they could experience, and they'll never know. They'll never get the chance to live their lives. Doesn't that matter? Doesn't their potential matter?" I was crying now, couldn't help it, could hear those children in the background, alive, innocent, unaware, minutes from death. "Their potential matters," he said quietly. "That's why I'm doing this. So their potential is never crushed by poverty, never destroyed by hunger and shame. They'll die with their dreams intact, with their innocence preserved. That's my gift to them." I heard one of the children say, "Daddy, I'm sleepy." Heard him respond, "That's okay, sweetheart. You can sleep. Daddy's here." Heard the horror of a father comforting his child while murdering her. "Units are almost there," I said desperately. "Just a few more minutes, please. Just wait. Just give them a chance to help." But he was done talking. I could hear him settling back in his seat, could hear his breathing becoming slower, more relaxed. "It's done," he said simply. "We're all going to sleep now, together as a family. Thank you for listening. I just needed someone to understand, someone to know this was love, not cruelty. This was protection, not murder. Tell people that. Tell them I loved my family more than anything." The line went quiet but didn't disconnect. I could still hear them. Hear the children's breathing becoming slower. Hear the wife mumbling something drowsy and confused. Hear the father's final breaths as he too succumbed. Units arrived 6 minutes later, too late. They found the car exactly as described. All 4 family members dead, children still holding their tablets, wife still clutching her book. Father's hand on the phone he'd used to call me, his final act of humanity to explain, to justify, to seek understanding or absolution or validation for the unforgivable thing he'd done. The investigation confirmed everything he'd told me. The financial collapse, the sealed car, the carbon monoxide, the drugged coffee, the timeline, all of it exactly as he'd described with clinical precision. They found a letter in his pocket, written to his children, explaining why he'd done this, how much he loved them, how this was the only way to protect them, the same twisted logic he'd used on me, preserved on paper for investigators and eventually media to dissect and analyze. That call broke something in me that hasn't healed, maybe never will. The sound of those children's voices going quiet, the knowledge that I was listening to a family die in real time and couldn't do anything to stop it. Couldn't say the right words, couldn't make him see reason, couldn't save them. I took a month off after that call. Couldn't work, couldn't function. Spent most days just staring at walls, replaying the call in my head, thinking of things I could have said differently, arguments I could have made, ways I might have delayed him long enough for units to arrive. My therapist said it wasn't my fault, said there was nothing I could have done, said he'd made his decision long before he picked up the phone. But that doesn't help, doesn't make the guilt go away, doesn't silence the voices I heard dying while I listened helplessly. When I finally returned to work after my month off following the Miller's Lake call, everyone treated me differently, carefully, like I was fragile, like I might break at any moment. Maybe they were right. Maybe I was broken. Maybe I should have quit then, found a different career, something that didn't involve listening to people die. But I didn't. I came back, convinced myself I could handle it, told myself I'd develop better coping mechanisms, better boundaries. I lasted 3 weeks before another confession call came in, and this one was different from the others, more calculated, more disturbing in its implications, showing me that monsters don't always look like monsters. Sometimes they wear scrubs and carry medical degrees and hide behind careers built on helping people. The call came on a Tuesday night, around 11 p.m. I was tired, near the end of a long shift, looking forward to going home when my board lit up with a new call. I accepted it, heard a woman's voice, professional, articulate, calm in a way that immediately made me pay attention. "I'm calling to confess to 17 murders," she said. No preamble, no emotion, just straightforward statement of fact like she was reporting a car accident. My hand froze over my keyboard. 17 murders, said so casually, so matter-of-factly. "Ma'am, I need you to repeat that. Did you say murders?" I needed confirmation, needed to believe I'd heard wrong. "Yes, 17 murders over the past 3 years," she confirmed. "I'm a nurse at Riverside Care Facility. I work with elderly patients. Terminal cases mostly, cancer, advanced dementia, end-stage organ failure, people who are suffering, who are ready to die, who beg for release from their pain." My blood was running cold. I understood what she was describing. Angel of death, mercy killer, whatever you want to call nurses who decide to play God with their patients' lives. "I've been ending their suffering," she continued, "administering fatal doses of morphine, making it look natural, making it peaceful. No one suspected because they were all expected to die anyway. I just expedited the process, made it more humane, took away their pain." "Ma'am, where are you right now? Are you at the facility?" I was trying to get location, trying to dispatch units, trying to process what I was hearing. "I'm in the medication room," she said, "preparing tonight's dose for Mr. Patterson, room 304. He's 87 years old, pancreatic cancer, in constant agony despite the pain management protocols. He's been begging me for weeks to help him, and tonight I'm preparing the injection now while I talk to you. I wanted to confess before I do it, wanted someone to know that this isn't murder. This is compassion, this is mercy. This is what healthcare should be when medicine can no longer heal, only prolong suffering." The rationalization in her voice was chilling. The absolute conviction that she was doing the right thing, that killing was kindness, that she had the right to decide when her patients should die. "Ma'am, you need to stop what you're doing. You need to put down whatever you're preparing. This isn't mercy, this is murder. You don't have the right to make this decision. These people have families, have lives, have the right to die naturally in their own time." I was pleading, trying to make her see reason, but she just sighed, patient sigh like she'd expected this reaction. "Society doesn't understand," she said. "People who haven't watched someone die slowly, painfully, begging for it to end, they don't understand that sometimes death is a gift. Sometimes it's the only kindness left to give. Tell me about the 17 victims." I said, changing tactics, trying to keep her talking, trying to delay whatever she was planning. "Tell me their names, tell me about them. Help me understand why you thought this was necessary." She was quiet for a moment, then started listing them, name after name, describing each one, their diagnosis, their pain level, their quality of life, their final words to her, justifying each killing as an act of compassion. Martha Henderson, 73, advanced Alzheimer's, didn't recognize her own children, spent her days in confusion and fear. I gave her peace. Robert Chun, 81, lung cancer, drowning in his own fluid, gasping for every breath. I gave him relief. Sarah Williams, 69, ALS, completely paralyzed, could only communicate by blinking. Told me through her daughter that she wanted to die. I honored her wish. On and on she went. 17 names, 17 justifications. 17 times she decided her judgment was more important than law, than ethics, than her patient's right to die naturally. Some of them didn't ask for it, she admitted. Some were too far gone to communicate, but I could see it in their eyes. The pleading, the exhaustion, the readiness. I'm trained to read patients, to understand their needs even when they can't express them. I knew they were ready. I knew I was helping. The presumption of it, the arrogance of deciding she could read someone's desire to die in their eyes was staggering. Units were already en route to the facility. I could see them moving on my screen, but I needed to keep her talking, needed to delay her long enough for them to arrive. "Mr. Patterson," I said, "the patient you're about to help, what has he told you? Has he explicitly asked you to kill him?" She was quiet, preparing her response carefully. He's asked me to increase his morphine, to give him enough that he doesn't wake up. He said he's ready to go, that he's tired, that the pain is too much. He hasn't used the exact words, "please kill me," but the intent is clear. The desire is obvious. He's giving me permission through every look, every groan of pain, every exhausted breath. That wasn't consent. That was her interpreting pain and fatigue as a death wish, projecting her own beliefs onto vulnerable patients, deciding for them when they'd suffered enough. "What about his family?" I asked. "Does he have family? Have they been consulted about this decision?" Another pause, then reluctantly, "He has a daughter. She visits on weekends. She's not ready to let go. She still thinks he might improve. She's in denial about his condition, but I can't let her denial prolong his suffering. My duty is to my patient, not to his family's emotional needs." The coldness of that, the dismissal of family bonds, of love, of the natural grieving process, revealed how disconnected she'd become from normal human empathy. "You're not going to give him that injection," I said firmly. "Police are on their way to the facility right now. If you administer that dose, you'll be caught in the act, charged with murder. Is that what you want? To spend the rest of your life in prison? To lose your license, your career, your freedom?" "I've already lost my freedom," she said quietly. "I've been carrying the weight of those 17 deaths alone, unable to tell anyone, unable to share the burden of those decisions. Calling you tonight is relief, finally being able to confess, to explain, to help people understand that I'm not a monster. I'm a caregiver who cares too much, who can't watch suffering without acting, who has the courage to do what other nurses are too afraid to do." The delusion in her words, the belief that her actions were courageous rather than criminal, showed how far she'd strayed from any reasonable ethical framework. "I'm going to deliver this injection," she said, voice taking on a tone of finality. "I'm going to give Mr. Patterson the peace he's been begging for, and then I'm going to wait here for the police. I'm not going to run. I'm not going to hide. I'm going to own what I've done, face the consequences, and hope that someday society will understand that there are worse things than death. Prolonged suffering is worse. Indignity is worse. Pain without purpose is worse." I heard movement through the phone, heard her walking, heard a door opening, heard the quiet sounds of a hospital room at night, machines beeping, someone breathing labored breaths. "Mr. Patterson," I heard her say gently, "it's time for your medication. This is going to help you sleep. You're going to feel so much better very soon." I heard the patient mumble something, couldn't make out words. Heard the nurse respond soothingly. Heard the clinical sounds of an injection being administered. Heard her saying, "That's it. Just relax. Let it work. You're going to be at peace now. No more pain, no more fear, just peace." I was screaming into the phone by this point, trying to stop her, trying to make her hear me, but she'd set the phone down, was focused on her patient, on her final kill disguised as mercy. Police burst into the room 2 minutes later, too late to stop the injection, but in time to arrest her. In time to try to save Mr. Patterson with naloxone, though it was ultimately unsuccessful. The dose had been too large, too well calculated by someone who knew exactly how much morphine was needed to ensure death. She didn't resist arrest, confessed everything immediately, asked if she could finish her shift first, seemed genuinely concerned about who would cover her patients. She was completely disconnected from the reality of what she'd done, completely convinced of her righteousness, completely unable to see herself as a serial killer, only as a compassionate caregiver who'd had the courage to do what was necessary. The investigation that followed was extensive, reviewing every death on her ward for the past 3 years, interviewing families, examining medical records, ultimately confirming 18 murders counting Mr. Patterson, not 17. 18 patients who died not from their illnesses, but from a nurse who decided she knew better than nature, better than law, better than ethics what was best for them. Most families were devastated, felt violated, felt robbed of those final days or weeks with their loved ones. Some had said goodbye but not expecting it to be that night. Some hadn't said goodbye at all because they thought they had more time. A few families, surprisingly, expressed gratitude, said their loved one had been suffering, said maybe she'd done the right thing even if it was illegal. That moral ambiguity, that gray area. That's what made this case haunt me differently than the others. Because unlike the father at the lake who was clearly delusional, clearly wrong, or the photo stalker who was obviously predatory, this nurse raised uncomfortable questions about autonomy, about suffering, about the ethics of end-of-life care, about whether mercy killing could ever be justified. And I don't have answers to those questions. I just know that 18 people died by her hand, that families were robbed of time with loved ones, that a caregiver betrayed the fundamental trust of her profession, and that her voice on that call, so calm, so rational, so convinced of her righteousness. That voice still haunts me when I think about all the ways people can justify horror to themselves, can reframe murder as mercy, can convince themselves that their judgment supersedes law, ethics, and basic human rights. After the nurse case, I took another extended leave, 2 months this time. My supervisor practically ordered it, said I was showing signs of severe burnout, said I needed real time away to process the accumulated trauma. I spent those 2 months in intensive therapy, working through not just the recent calls, but years of accumulated horror, trying to understand why I kept coming back to a job that was destroying me psychologically. My therapist asked me directly, "Why do you keep doing this? What keeps you answering those calls?" I didn't have a good answer then, still don't really. Something about feeling like someone has to be there. Someone has to bear witness. Someone has to be the voice that tries to stop horror even when it's usually too late. I came back to work after those 2 months, convinced myself I was better, stronger, more resilient. I lasted 5 shifts before the call that changed everything, before the call that 7 years later I still think about every single day. The call that made me finally understand that some evil isn't hot and passionate. Some evil is cold and patient. Some evil plays games measured in years and decades. And there's nothing you can do to stop it, because by the time you understand what's happening, it's already too late, the pieces are already in place, and all you can do is wait for the reveal. That might never come or might come so far in the future you won't even be around to see it. It was a Tuesday afternoon, weather beautiful, spring sunshine coming through the windows. I was in a good mood actually, feeling like maybe I could do this job, maybe I could handle it. The call came in at 2:47 p.m. I accepted it with my standard greeting. Heard a voice that made every hair on my body stand up instantly, not because it was threatening, not because it was angry, but because it was wrong. Fundamentally wrong in a way I'd never experienced before. Male voice, adult, but with a quality that was almost childlike, not in pitch but in cadence, in the way words were chosen, in the strange innocent quality overlaying something deeply disturbing. "I'm calling to tell you about the bad thing I did," he said, speaking slowly, carefully, like he was selecting each word with precision. "There's a family living at 2847 Riverside Drive, mother named Jennifer, father named Michael. 2 daughters, Emma, who is 9, and Sophie, who is 6. I know their names because I've been watching them for 3 months. I know everything about them, their schedules, their habits, their routines. I know them better than they know themselves." The stalking aspect was disturbing enough, but something about his tone, about the way he spoke about this family, made it clear this was different from the photo stalker. This was something else, something worse in ways I couldn't yet articulate. "Sir, what have you done to this family? Have you hurt them?" I was already typing the address, already preparing to dispatch units, already feeling dread building in my chest. "I haven't hurt them," he said, sounding almost offended. "I would never hurt them. They're perfect. They're my project, my art, my life's work. Hurting them would ruin everything." That word project, the way he said it with such reverence, such ownership, made my skin crawl. "I was inside their house 3 nights ago," he continued. "Monday night, they went to a birthday party. I watched them leave. They were gone for exactly 2 hours and 17 minutes. I was inside their house for all of that time, and it was wonderful. Being in their space, touching their things, breathing their air, it was intimate. It was perfect. What did you do while you were in their house? I asked, needing details, needing something concrete I could act on, some crime I could report beyond breaking and entering. He was quiet for a moment, like he was savoring the memory. I moved things, he said finally. Small things. Things they might not notice right away. Picture frames tilted by exactly 15 degrees. Kitchen drawer left open exactly 3 inches. Bathroom door that was closed now standing open. Their daughter Emma's teddy bear moved from her bed to the rocking chair in the corner. Little Sophie's shoes rearranged in her closet, socks that were folded now unfolded, tiny alterations throughout the entire house. The methodical nature of it, the precision, the attention to detail, revealed someone who'd planned this extensively, who'd thought through every aspect. Why? I asked. Why would you do that? What's the point? He laughed softly, delighted laugh like someone appreciating a joke no one else understood. The point, he said, drawing out the word, is to make them question themselves, to make them doubt their own memory, to plant seeds of uncertainty that will grow over time. Did I close that drawer? Did I move that bear? Am I remembering correctly? Am I going crazy? That slow erosion of confidence in their own perception. That's beautiful. That's art. That's the foundation of what comes next. What comes next? Those words hung in the air, heavy with implication. What comes next? I asked, not sure I wanted to know the answer. That's the beautiful part, he said, voice full of anticipation. What comes next is patience. I'm not going to rush this. I'm not going to do anything dramatic or obvious. I'm going to move slowly, glacially, over months and years, little touches here and there, small incidents of things being slightly wrong. They'll report it eventually. They'll call police, but what will they report? That someone moved their teddy bear, that a drawer was open. Who investigates that? Who takes that seriously? And each time they'll feel more crazy, more paranoid, more isolated because no one will believe them. The long-term psychological torture he was describing, the commitment to sustain terror over potentially years, revealed someone deeply disturbed, deeply patient, deeply dangerous in ways that were hard to categorize. But that's not even the bad thing yet, he said, voice dropping to almost a whisper. The bad thing is what I left there. What I hid where they'll never find it with casual looking, but where they will eventually find it, maybe in months, maybe in years. When they're renovating or moving or just unlucky, and when they find it, they'll know, they'll understand that I was there, that I touched everything, that I know them, and they'll realize this has been happening longer than they thought, that I've been part of their lives longer than they can remember. What did you leave there? I demanded, no longer trying to maintain professional neutrality, just needing to know what threat this family was facing. The silence stretched out. 5 seconds, 10, 15, I could hear him breathing. Could hear what sounded like him smiling through the phone, that particular quality breathing as when someone is grinning. That's the beautiful part, he repeated. I'm not going to tell you, not going to tell them. They'll have to discover it themselves, and until they do, they'll wonder. And even after they find it, if they find it, they'll wonder if there's more, if I left other things, if their entire house is contaminated by my presence, that uncertainty, that permanent doubt. That's my gift to them. That's what I've created. But here's what I will tell you, he continued, voice taking on a conspiratorial tone. What I hid is part of them. Something I took while they weren't looking, something personal, something intimate, something they'll recognize immediately when they find it, and they'll know I had it, I held it. I kept it for 3 days before returning it to them hidden where they'd never expect. And that violation, that knowledge that I touched something so personal, that's going to destroy their sense of safety more completely than any physical violence ever could. The implications of what he was saying, the violation he was describing, made me feel physically sick. I was typing frantically, had multiple supervisors gathered around my station now, everyone listening to this call, everyone understanding this was something beyond our normal experience. "Sir, I need you to give me your name. I need you to come in and talk to us. What you're describing is criminal harassment, breaking and entering, stalking. You need help. You need intervention before this escalates further." He laughed again, longer this time, genuinely amused by my appeal. "It's not going to escalate," he said patiently. "That's what you don't understand. This isn't going to become violent. Violence is crude. Violence is final. Violence ends the game. What I'm doing is sustainable. It can last forever. It can become part of their life, part of their family story, the house that was never quite right, the family that was always slightly paranoid, and I'll be there, not physically most of the time, but in spirit, in impact, in the permanent mark I've left on their psyches. I'm calling you because I wanted there to be a record," he explained. "I wanted someone official to know about this, to document it, so when they eventually report the strange things happening, when they call your colleagues in 6 months or a year or 5 years, there will be this call in the system, this warning that someone was doing this to them, this confirmation that they're not crazy, that it's real, and that knowledge will somehow make it worse, knowing they were warned, knowing someone tried to help but couldn't, knowing this has been happening longer than they realized and might continue happening for the rest of their lives. That's the final twist. That's what makes this perfect. Sophistication of the psychological torture he designed, the layers of violation and doubt and confirmation and helplessness he built into this plan, revealed someone who'd thought about this extensively, who understood human psychology deeply, who knew exactly how to maximize suffering without ever committing an act that would be taken seriously by law enforcement. "Sir, please," I tried one more time, "please tell me who you are. Please let me help you. What you're describing isn't healthy, isn't normal. You need professional help. Please let us intervene before this goes any further." The line was quiet for a long moment. Then he spoke again, voice softer now, almost sad. "You can't help me," he said, "because I don't want to be helped. This is who I am. This is what I do. This is what brings me joy and purpose and satisfaction, and telling you about it, knowing you're listening, knowing you're documenting this, knowing you're probably recording this call, and that somewhere in a database this conversation will exist forever. That's almost better than the act itself, because now I'm immortal. Now this moment is preserved. Now years from now someone might listen to this recording and understand what I created, what I accomplished, and that's beautiful. That's art. That's legacy. The narcissism, the need for recognition, the desire to be remembered even anonymously revealed another layer to his pathology. "I'm going to hang up now," he said, voice returning to that strange childlike quality, "and you're going to send police to that address. And they're going to search the house, and they're not going to find what I hid because I'm very good at hiding things. I've practiced. I've planned. I've thought through every scenario. And the family is going to be terrified, and you're going to feel helpless because there's nothing you can do, nothing anyone can do. And I'm going to go back to my normal life, my normal job, my normal routine. And no one around me will have any idea what I've done, what I'm capable of, what I'm planning for the future, because I'm patient, I'm careful, and I'm very, very good at being invisible." The confidence in his voice, the absolute certainty that he was untouchable, was chilling. "Before you hang up," I said desperately, "tell me one thing, just one thing. Why this family? Why them specifically? What made you choose them?" The silence stretched again, then he answered, voice contemplative. "No reason," he said simply. "That's what makes it perfect. It's random. It's arbitrary. They did nothing to deserve this. They did nothing to attract my attention. I just saw them one day, thought they looked perfect, and decided they would be my project. And that randomness, that lack of cosmic justice or reason, that's what will haunt them most, knowing they were selected randomly, knowing this could have been anyone, knowing there's no why, just chance in my decision, and that lack of meaning that's the final cruelty. The line went dead. He'd hung up. I sat there with the headset on, listening to the dial tone, feeling like I just witnessed something profoundly evil, not because of violence, not because of death, but because of the methodical, patient, sophisticated psychological torture he described with such pride, such satisfaction, such absolute confidence that he would get away with it. Units were already en route to the Riverside Drive address. Supervisor was on the phone with detectives. The call was being copied and saved and flagged as high priority, but even as all that was happening, I knew it wouldn't matter. Knew he was right. Knew we wouldn't find him, wouldn't stop him. Wouldn't be able to protect that family from what he'd set in motion. The response to the Riverside Drive call was immediate and overwhelming. We sent multiple units, detectives, even a K-9 unit trained to detect hidden electronics or recently disturbed surfaces. The family, the Hendersons, Jennifer and Michael with their daughters Emma and Sophie, were home when officers arrived, were completely blindsided by what they were told. Had no idea anyone had been in their house, had noticed nothing unusual in the 3 days since the break-in. Officers explained the situation carefully, tried not to terrify them, but needed them to understand the seriousness. Needed them to know someone had been in their house, had touched their things, had left something hidden that needed to be found. The search took 6 hours, every room thoroughly examined, every hiding place checked, walls tapped for hollow spots, floorboards examined for signs of disturbance, electronics inspected for hidden devices, furniture moved, drawers emptied, closets dismantled. Officers found evidence of the break-in, tool marks on the back door lock so subtle they'd been completely missed. Found exactly what he'd described. The picture frame tilted 15 degrees, the drawer open 3 inches, the teddy bear in the wrong place, the shoes rearranged. All the small alterations he'd mentioned, confirming his story, confirming he'd really been there, really done what he'd described. But they didn't find what he'd hidden, searched until dark, brought in additional resources, forensic specialists, crime scene techs, everyone looking for whatever he'd left behind, and found nothing, no foreign objects, no hidden cameras, no listening devices. No packages or containers or unusual items, nothing that shouldn't be there, nothing that explained what he'd taken and returned, nothing that gave us any leads or evidence or way to identify him. The family stood there watching their home being torn apart, growing more traumatized by the hour, realizing their safe space had been violated in ways they were only beginning to understand, seeing their daughter's confusion and fear, not knowing how to explain this to children who were supposed to feel safe in their own home. Detective Morrison, who'd been assigned as lead investigator, interviewed the family extensively, trying to identify any connection to the caller, any reason they might have been targeted, any person in their life who matched the voice or the profile. They came up empty. Jennifer was an accountant. Michael was a teacher. They had normal jobs, normal friends, normal lives, no enemies they could identify, no one who would want to do this to them, no reason anyone would fixate on them. The randomness of it, the arbitrary selection the caller had described, seemed to be accurate. They were victims of pure chance, of one person's decision to make them his project for reasons that had nothing to do with them. The call recording was analyzed extensively, voice compared to databases, speech patterns examined by forensic linguists, background noise filtered and enhanced looking for identifying sounds. The analysis revealed disturbing details. The caller was likely well educated based on vocabulary and speech patterns, probably worked in a professional setting based on comfort with technical language, showed signs of high intelligence and sophisticated planning, exhibited no signs of psychosis or detachment from reality, was completely aware of what he was doing and completely in control of his actions. He wasn't crazy in any clinical sense, wasn't hallucinating or delusional, was simply someone who decided psychological torture was an acceptable hobby, who developed skills and methods for inflicting maximum trauma while minimizing legal risk, who understood the system well enough to operate in its blind spots. The Hendersons couldn't stay in the house, not that first night, not after understanding someone had been in their space, touched their things, possibly taken something personal, and hidden it somewhere they couldn't find. They stayed with Jennifer's parents for a week while the house was processed as a crime scene, while detectives conducted follow-up searches, while security systems were installed and locks were changed, and every possible measure was taken to secure the property. But no security system could secure their peace of mind. No lock could keep out the fear that had been planted. No alarm could prevent the psychological damage that had already been done. When they did move back in, life was different, fundamentally changed in ways that wouldn't heal with time. Emma became anxious, started checking her stuffed animals obsessively to make sure they were where she left them, developed rituals around bedtime to confirm everything was in its proper place. Sophie had nightmares about a man in her room watching her sleep, even though the caller had explicitly said he didn't physically hurt them. The knowledge that he'd been there, might be there again, was enough to destroy her sense of safety. Jennifer couldn't sleep without medication, would wake up multiple times a night checking doors and windows, jumping at every sound, seeing threats in every shadow. Michael tried to be strong, tried to maintain normalcy for his daughters, but the strain showed, the constant vigilance, the knowledge that their home had been violated and might be violated again, wore him down day by day. They called police repeatedly over the following months. REPORT, ING strange occurrences, things moved, sounds heard, feelings of being watched. Each time officers responded, checked the house, found nothing. Eventually the reports started being treated as paranoia, as understandable trauma response rather than actual new incidents, exactly as the caller had predicted. The family could feel themselves being dismissed, could feel police growing weary of their calls, could feel the isolation of being victims of a crime no one really understood or knew how to investigate, and that isolation was part of the torture, part of what he designed, the erosion of trust, the breakdown of support systems, the slow descent into paranoid isolation. 6 months after the initial break-in, the family put the house on the market. Couldn't live there anymore, couldn't continue pretending they felt safe, couldn't keep subjecting their daughters to the constant anxiety. They sold at a significant loss. Buyers were few once they understood the history, the violation, the unsolved nature of the case. They moved to a different neighborhood, different city actually, tried to start fresh, tried to leave the trauma behind, but it followed them in Emma's anxiety, in Sophie's nightmares, in Jennifer and Michael's hypervigilance, in the family's permanent understanding that safety is an illusion, that violation can happen randomly, without reason, without warning, without resolution. The new owners of the house, a young couple who got it cheap and were willing to overlook the history, were briefed by police about the situation, given copies of the reports, warned about what had happened. They searched extensively before moving in, hired their own security consultant, even brought in a psychic at one point, though that was their own decision, not police recommendation. They found nothing, moved in believing whatever had been hidden had already been found or never existed. Began their own life in that house. For 2 years nothing happened. No incidents, no strange occurrences, no evidence of continued harassment. And everyone started to believe maybe the caller had moved on. Maybe it had been a one-time thing. Maybe the family's paranoia had been overblown. Then, 2 years and 3 months after the original call, I got a phone call at home. My personal cell phone, number that wasn't listed, that only close friends and family had. I answered, heard that voice, that same disturbing childlike quality, that same careful cadence, and my blood went cold. "Hello," he said. "I thought you'd want to know. They found it yesterday. The new owners, they were renovating the master bathroom, removing the medicine cabinet to install a new one, and there it was, behind the cabinet, hidden in the wall cavity, exactly where I left it, and it was perfect." Their reaction was perfect. She screamed, he called police, and now it's evidence. Now it's real. Now everyone knows I wasn't lying, that I really did hide something, and the Hendersons are going to find out. They're going to know it was there the whole time. All those months they were searching, all that money they lost selling the house. It was there, and they'll never forgive themselves for leaving, for giving up, for not finding it. What was it? I asked, voice shaking. What did you hide there? He laughed, that same delighted laugh. That's the beautiful part, he said. It was Sophie's baby blanket. The one she'd slept with every night until it mysteriously disappeared around the time they moved. They thought it got lost in the move. Blamed themselves. Sophie cried for weeks, and the whole time it was in the wall of their old house, the house they'd left, and now they know I took it. I had it for 3 days, I touched it, I kept it. And then I put it back in their house hidden where they couldn't find it. But where? Eventually someone would, and that violation, that knowledge that I held something so precious to their child, that's going to haunt them forever. That's the gift that keeps on giving. The line went dead. I sat there shaking, called Detective Morrison immediately, reported the call, reported what had been found, learned that yes, it was true. The new owners had found something behind the medicine cabinet, something that had been confirmed as belonging to the Hendersons, Sophie's blanket, wrapped in plastic, preserved perfectly, with a note. I was here. I'm still here. I'll always be here. The note was handwritten, same careful penmanship we'd seen before. Would be analyzed for forensic evidence, but likely would reveal nothing. He was too careful, too practiced, too good at leaving no trace except the psychological impact he intended. The Hendersons were notified, came to the police station to identify the blanket. Sophie broke down crying seeing it, mixture of relief that it hadn't been lost and horror understanding where it had been, who had taken it, what it meant. Jennifer and Michael were devastated. The confirmation that everything they'd feared was real, that someone really had been in their house, really had taken something precious, really had hidden it exactly as promised, destroyed whatever fragile piece they'd managed to build. The family would need more therapy, more support, more help processing this new trauma layered on top of the old. And all because one person decided they would be his art project, his source of entertainment, his way of proving how clever and patient and untouchable he was. That was 7 years ago. The case remains open but inactive. No new leads, no identification of the caller. No way to prevent him from doing this to someone else, somewhere else. No way to catch someone who's patient enough to wait years for his plans to unfold. Careful enough to leave no forensic evidence, smart enough to operate in the gaps of law enforcement capabilities. I think about that call every single day, hear that voice in my head, wonder if he's watching another family now, if he's planning another project, if somewhere someone is being selected randomly to be his next work of art, and there's nothing I can do, nothing anyone can do, except wait for the phone to ring again, wait for him to call and confess. Wait for him to prove once again that he's smarter than all of us, that his patience is infinite, that his need for recognition will always overcome his desire for complete anonymity. 7 years have passed since the Riverside Drive call. 7 years since I heard that voice describing his art project with such pride and satisfaction. I'm still working dispatch, still taking calls, still doing this job that has slowly consumed pieces of my humanity, carved out parts of my psyche and filled them with voices I'll never forget, confessions I'll carry forever, horrors I can't unsee or unhear. People ask me why I stay, why I keep doing this, and I don't have a good answer anymore. Maybe it's because I feel like someone has to bear witness, someone has to be there when people need to confess, someone has to listen even when listening causes damage that never fully heals. The confession calls continue, not frequently but regularly enough that I know it's a thing, a pattern, a type of call that exists in the ecosystem of 911 dispatch. In the 7 years since Riverside Drive, I've taken 9 more confession calls, bringing my total to 32 over my 12-year career. 32 times someone has called to tell me what they've done or what they're about to do. 32 voices that live in my head rent-free. 32 stories of violence, death, violation, terror, cruelty, and twisted logic that I replay in quiet moments whether I want to or not. Some were prevented, most weren't. Some resulted in arrests, some remain unsolved mysteries. All of them took something from me, chipped away at my belief in human goodness, made me understand how thin the veneer of civilization really is. The worst part isn't the violence itself, isn't even the deaths or the suffering. The worst part is the calmness with which people describe these things, the rational explanations for irrational acts, the absolute conviction that what they're doing is necessary, justified, righteous, or artistic. The woman who tortured her husband didn't sound crazy. She sounded exhausted, broken by years of abuse, pushed beyond her breaking point by a system that failed to protect her. The father at the lake didn't sound evil. He sounded desperately loving, convinced he was saving his family from suffering worse than death. The nurse didn't sound like a monster. She sounded compassionate, dedicated, genuinely believing she was providing mercy. And the Riverside Drive caller didn't sound psychotic. He sounded intelligent, articulate, proud of his creativity, his patience, his craft. That's what makes confession calls so disturbing. They force you to confront the reality that evil doesn't always roar. Sometimes it whispers. Sometimes it explains itself patiently. Sometimes it sounds reasonable and logical within its own twisted framework. These aren't cartoon villains twirling mustaches. These are people. Human beings with reasons and motivations and internal logic that led them to decide violence or violation or murder was the answer to their problems. And some part of my job is to listen to that logic, to try to understand it, to try to find the thread of humanity still connecting them to reality so I can pull on it. Try to talk them back from the edge. Try to prevent what they're planning to do or help catch them for what they've already done. The success rate is depressingly low. By the time someone calls to confess, the decision is usually already made. The plan is already in motion. The point of no return has already been crossed. I've talked maybe 3 people out of acting on their confessions. 3 out of 32, less than 10%. And those 3 haunt me almost as much as the ones who went through with it, because I wonder if I really saved them or just delayed them. If they're still out there wrestling with the same impulses, the same justifications, the same internal pressure that led them to pick up the phone and call 911 to confess. I gave them my personal number, those 3, told them to call me if they ever felt that way again. 2 never called back. 1 called 3 times over the years, checking in, telling me they're still fighting, still resisting, still grateful I listened. That one success story has to be enough to justify the 29 failures, has to be enough to make the job worth doing, has to be. My therapist says I have complex PTSD, says my symptoms are consistent with prolonged exposure to traumatic content, says I need to consider whether this job is sustainable long-term given the psychological damage it's causing. I know she's right. I can see the changes in myself. The hypervigilance, the nightmares, the difficulty maintaining relationships because part of me is always listening to those voices, always replaying those calls, always waiting for the next confession. I'm 43 years old, been doing this job for 12 years, and I look 50, feel 60, carry weight that isn't physical. Weight of voices and stories and horrors that have made their home in my mind. The Riverside Drive caller never called again after that second call 7 years ago. The one where he told me they'd found the blanket. Part of me has been waiting, expecting him to reach out again, to describe his next project, to prove he's still out there, still operating, still making families his art. The silence is almost worse than another call would be because the silence means he could be anywhere, could be watching any family, could be in the middle of a project right now, and I'd never know until he decided to tell me. Until he needed that recognition, that official witness to his cleverness. I've looked for patterns in stalking reports, in breaking and entering cases, in families reporting strange occurrences, trying to identify his signature, trying to catch him. But either he's stopped or he's gotten better at staying invisible, and I don't know which possibility is worse. The Hendersons moved again after the blanket was found. Left the state entirely, I heard, trying to get as far from the trauma as possible. I don't know if it worked, don't know if distance helps when the trauma lives inside you. When it's not about the place but about the knowledge that you were selected randomly, that your home was violated, that someone studied you and your children and touched your things and left a permanent mark on your family psyche. Sophie would be 13 now, Emma would be 16, teenagers trying to live normal lives, go to school, have friends, all while carrying the knowledge that a stranger targeted their family for no reason, that he might still be out there, that safety is an illusion. I think about them sometimes, wonder how they're doing, hope they found peace, doubt they really did. The other confession calls blend together in my memory sometimes, not because they weren't significant, but because there are so many, because each one carries such weight that they compress together, become a general sense of human darkness rather than distinct incidents. I remember the man who called to confess he'd been planning a school shooting, who wanted someone to talk him down, who gave me 2 hours to convince him life was worth living, that his pain didn't justify inflicting pain on innocent children, and I did it. I kept him talking, kept him engaged, kept him connected until he agreed to put down the guns and let me send help. That's one of my 3 saves, one of the calls I can look back on and feel like I made a difference. Like the job mattered, like the damage to my psyche was worth it because somewhere there are 23 children who grew up, graduated, had lives, because I kept one broken man on the phone long enough to reach him. I remember the woman who called to confess she'd killed her elderly mother with a pillow, suffocated her because the dementia had progressed so far that her mother didn't recognize her anymore, didn't know who she was, and the woman couldn't bear it. Couldn't watch her mother live without memory or recognition or dignity. She called from her mother's room, sitting next to the body, crying but also relieved, saying it was mercy, saying her mother would have wanted this, saying she'd done the right thing even though she knew it was murder. That call was different from the nurse because it was personal. It was one specific person she loved ending the suffering of another specific person she loved. Not a serial pattern, but a single desperate act. She was arrested, charged, eventually got a plea deal for reduced sentence, given the circumstances, given the caregiving burden, given the lack of support systems, given the tragedy of the whole situation. I remember the teenager who called to confess he'd been poisoning his stepfather slowly over 6 months, adding small amounts of antifreeze to his drinks, watching him get sicker, watching him waste away. And no one suspected anything. Doctors thought it was cancer or autoimmune disease. And he called because the stepfather finally died that morning and he needed to tell someone, needed to confess, needed to claim credit for what he'd done. He was 14 years old, 14. Explained calmly that his stepfather had been abusing his mother and him for 3 years, that he'd decided this was the only solution, that he'd researched methods, practiced dosing, planned everything meticulously, and succeeded. And now he wanted to confess because he wanted people to know his mother was free, that the abuse had ended, that he'd protected his family the only way he knew how. That call destroyed me because he was a child who'd been forced to become a killer to protect his mother, and the system had failed him so completely that murder seemed like his only option. Each confession call teaches me something about humanity, about psychology, about the breaking points that turn ordinary people into criminals, about the justifications we create for actions we know are wrong, about the human capacity for both suffering and inflicting suffering. Some callers are remorseful, calling because guilt is eating them alive and they need to confess to alleviate it. Some are defiant, calling to claim credit, to explain their actions, to ensure their story is told the way they want it told. Some are seeking validation, wanting someone official to agree that what they did was necessary, was justified, was understandable. Some are playing games, like the Riverside Drive caller, turning confession into performance, turning their crimes into art that requires an audience to witness and appreciate. The protocols for handling confession calls have improved over the years. We get more training now, more support, more resources for processing these traumatic calls. The recording and analysis technology is better, giving investigators more to work with, more chances to identify and apprehend callers. The interagency coordination is better, with FBI and state police more involved in serious cases, bringing more expertise and resources to bear. But no amount of protocol or technology or support can change the fundamental reality that some calls are just people telling you they're going to do something terrible or have done something terrible, and there's nothing you can do to stop it. Nothing you can say that will change their mind. Nothing you can offer that will undo what's been done or prevent what's about to happen. I've thought about quitting many times, thought about walking away from this job, finding something else that doesn't involve listening to the worst moments of people's lives, that doesn't require me to carry other people's trauma, that doesn't fill my head with voices describing horror. But every time I seriously consider leaving, I think about that school shooting I prevented. I think about the 3 people I talked down from their confessions. I think about the families who got closure because someone confessed on my line and I documented it and passed it to investigators. And I think maybe that's enough, maybe 3 saves out of 32 confessions, maybe a handful of families who got answers, maybe that's enough justification for the damage I'm taking. For the nightmares and the hypervigilance and the PTSD that's probably permanent at this point. My colleagues who've been doing this job as long as I have, we have an unspoken understanding, a shared knowledge of what this work costs, what it takes from you over time, how it changes you in ways you can't explain to people who haven't done it. We don't talk about the specific calls much, don't need to. We all have our own collection of voices we carry, our own catalog of confessions that replay in quiet moments. We cover for each other when someone needs a break, when someone's voice starts shaking on a call, when someone needs to step away after hearing something particularly disturbing. We're a tribe of the damaged, of the witnesses, of the people who choose to listen when others confess, and that shared experience creates bonds that are hard to explain but impossible to break. The Riverside Drive caller is still out there. I know it in my bones. No, he hasn't stopped. No, he's too committed to his art to simply quit. No, his need for recognition is too strong for permanent silence. He'll call again someday. Maybe me, maybe another dispatcher, maybe in another city with another family. And he'll describe his new project, his latest art, his continued proof that he's smarter than all of us, more patient, more creative, untouchable, and unstoppable. And whoever takes that call will listen, will document, will dispatch units, will try to help, and will probably fail because that's what he's designed. Failure and helplessness and the knowledge that some evil is too sophisticated, too patient, too careful to be caught by conventional means. I've accepted that I'll probably never stop thinking about these calls, never stop hearing these voices, never fully heal from the accumulated trauma of bearing witness to human darkness in its most articulate moments. The confession calls are part of me now, woven into my identity, shaping how I see the world, how I interact with people, how I understand the thin line between civilization and chaos. Sometimes I regret ever taking this job, ever answering that first confession call from the woman in the basement, ever becoming the repository for other people's worst acts and twisted justifications. But mostly I accept that this is who I am now. This is what I do. I listen when others confess. I bear witness when others need to be heard. I carry the weight of voices that need someone to remember what they said, what they did, what they believed justified their actions. That detail never made it into the official reports, the psychological weight of being a confessor, the cost of listening to calm voices describing horror, the permanent damage caused by carrying other people's darkest moments. The reports just document facts: time of call, content of confession, actions taken, outcomes achieved. Nothing about the dispatcher who listened, who absorbed that darkness, who carries it forward, who lies awake at night replaying conversations with murderers and stalkers and torturers who sounded so reasonable, so logical, so human despite the inhuman things they'd done. That's the hidden cost of this job, the invisible damage. The scars that don't show but never heal. The voices that echo forever in the minds of those who chose to listen when others chose to confess. I'm still here, still taking calls. Still waiting for the phone to ring and that voice to come through. That childlike cadence describing his latest art project, his new family, his continued proof that some people can torture others slowly, patiently, invisibly, and there's nothing we can do to stop them. I'm still here because someone has to be, someone has to listen, someone has to try even when trying means failing, even when listening means carrying weight that crushes you slowly over years. I'm still here because of the 3 I saved, because of the families who got closure, because of the small victories that have to justify the accumulating defeats. I'm still here because someone has to be the witness, the confessor, the voice on the other end saying 911, "What's your emergency?" Even when the emergency is already over, already done, already irreversible, and all that's left is the confession, the explanation, the need to be heard and remembered and understood by someone, anyone, even if that someone is a stranger at the end of a phone line who will carry your voice forever.